Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Well, good Tuesday morning to you. Seth Harp, Harp on Sports. Buddy Martin, the Buddy Martin Show with you here today as we start to hit the stages. I don't want to say to mid-March, but it is March 7th. SEC basketball tournament right around the corner. Of course, the Gators taking on Mississippi State on Thursday at 12:30 p.m. So we're going to get to that a little bit later on as we look at college basketball. One of college basketball's most hallowed records may go down. And is it an ethical thing if it goes down? Ethical is the wrong word. Is it cheap? Pistol Pete's all-time scoring mark. So I'm going to look at that a little bit later on in the show as well. So here we are again, Seth Harp, Harp on Sports, Buddy Martin. And, you know, in terms of Gators perspective, Gator basketball tournament, Gator women's basketball out of their tournament. Gator football spring practice is here, but of course the college football world and the NFL world still circling around Anthony Richardson's performance at the Combine, in which he set 2 Combine records for quarterbacks. And Buddy, it's been 72 hours since Anthony Richardson put on a performance of the century, if you will, for quarterbacks, to the point that people are coming out and saying his 53% completion percentage in college is irrelevant. People are coming out and saying that basically things that he did on the field in terms of wins and losses at Florida doesn't matter now because of all the intangibles he brings to the table. So I'll pass the baton to you. What did the Combine for Anthony Richardson do, not only for his stock, but his perception?
Well, good morning, Seth. Nice to be doing a show with you for the first time, and there's a lot in there. There was a busy weekend of many things we could pick to talk about, not the least of which is the baseball's team's bombastic performance against the Miami Hurricanes, and of course we could even go on in the track and field and whatever. But the bottom line is that I want to stop for a second and pause and reflect on what has just happened in Indianapolis. I'm not a Combine guy. I don't get off on the 40-yard times and the verticals and all this stuff. And I know it's important for the data they need to make their choices. But the most impressive thing was the people who said they met Richardson in the interviews and they were blown away by him as a young man. Now, I can't say that I know Anthony. Shane knows him better than I do, but I have been in interviews with him and heard him talk. And I think we're seeing something quite rare here. As I was talking last night to Shane and also to my friend Frank Franchi in Jacksonville about the performance of this guy in this particular event, which is what it was. Now it's become an event. I said, you have to look at greatness where you see it. Never mind that he hasn't become a starting quarterback in the NFL yet. That's not what this is about. That's like Heisman Trophy quarterbacks. They say, well, yeah, but he'll never be a good pro. If you win the Heisman, that's pretty good in itself. All right, let's judge what we have. Now, this is kind of like, I hate to use the reference of Chinese food making you still being hungry, but the bottom line is we still don't know naturally. And as Shane said last night, and Frank Franchi said, we'll know in 10 years. Okay, well, it ain't 10 years. It's right now. What we saw, and I wrote this last night in my notes, that Anthony Richardson was the hottest thing spoken out of Indianapolis. This Helio Castroneves went 190 miles an hour to win the Indy 500. And what he did, and I just read my colleague Ben Troop wrote this on this morning on his tweet. He said, Anthony Richardson is listed as having the highest relative athletic score among quarterbacks all time. And so that means something, I guess. So that's what it is. And again, one more reference. as I said to Francie last night, when you see greatness, you certainly want to recognize and salute it. And Frank, I said, you have a group there called Leonard Skinner that when you were a kid growing up, and what if he had come through Jacksonville and people hadn't recognized what they did in Jacksonville? They go on to become world famous and one of the famous rock bands of all time. And you didn't even know they were there. Let's just say Anthony Richardson was here. The 6 and 7 record they produced wasn't indicative of his talents. So it'll be really interesting, Seth. That's a long response and answer to your first question, but that's why I'm not going to let go of it. I think it means something.
It's interesting because the dichotomy of Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young, right? You have a guy that's a physical freak in Anthony Richardson. He checks every box that you want to check physically. He's fast. He can run through the roof. He can throw the ball 75 yards. He checks every single one of those boxes that you want a prototypical NFL quarterback to check. Even so, he's more of a quarterback from 15, 20 years ago with the speed and agility of a quarterback of today. Then you look at Bryce Young. He is, 5'10 and a half? He is 206 pounds. So you can sit there and say, well, Kyler Murray was right about that range. Yeah, and you know what? 4 years in, are we sold on Kyler Murray yet? I know he just got a big deal, and he led the Cardinals to a playoff, and he got hurt, but it battled with coaches. I know that's a side dish when it comes to this, but I look at Bryce Young compared to Anthony Richardson. One had tremendous success on the field, buddy. May win the Heisman if he doesn't get hurt. They may be in the national championship picture if he doesn't get hurt. And then you swing over to the other pendulum, Anthony Richardson, all this talent, but not the success on the field. When you lay these guys out and you look at Anthony Richardson A, Bryce Young B, however you want to look at it, if you're an NFL GM, how do you separate these two, potential as opposed to productivity?
Well, I mean, they're different, just two different styles. I mean, it depends upon what's your flavor of ice cream. You like strawberry, you like Rocky Road, whatever. The offense that you're going to run is going to dictate who you take and the styles, but you got to be a winner. You got to be a winner. And I think this is the part we haven't seen from Anthony yet. Bryce Young is his core values, his work ethic, his leadership ability, all that. We're going to have to see if Anthony can lead. He did learn that late in his last year at Florida, began to realize he could lead the team. So in terms of the measurables and all that, they got it, whatever. We're all guessing here. And again, it depends on what you want but how could you not just flip out when you see a guy running 85 yards for a touchdown and running past cornerbacks and safeties, and the strength and agility and his ability to leap and all that. So to me, I've been saying this since he came here and since I first saw him, he's the best looking prospect at quarterback the University of Florida has ever had, prospect. And I've seen them all. Spurrier included. And of course, Danny Werf, we could go on forever. The interesting comparison would be Anthony Richardson to Kyle Trask, who's been sitting there all this time waiting in mothballs, as he did at Florida. And I've always said that there ought to be an award called the First Responder Award in honor of Kyle Trask for what he did at Florida. I mean, despite the fact that Dan Mullen couldn't get him off the bench hardly, once he got there, you couldn't get him out of the game. And so you got contrasting styles there. The Francie I talked about, he's not going to do anything in measurables. I could probably have my vertical leap might be as good as his, but his ability to throw the football. Now, does that work for everybody? No. Kyler Murray is a freak. I mean, how can you look at him and look at the quarterbacks today and compare Kyle Trask? He's a different guy. Pure drop back throw. Can that work in the NFL? I guess we'll have a chance to find out. And I'm rooting for it because I think Kyle Trask deserves an opportunity. But he ain't going to be Tom Brady. We know that. So, again, the modern quarterbacks are all different. And again, the systems that we're seeing are still unfolding before our eyes. Let's see who takes him and what they do with him. That's called coaching, Seth.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting if Anthony Richardson ends up in a place like Carolina. We already know the Saints have a new quarterback in Derek Carr. If Kyle Trask is the starting quarterback in Tampa, and if somehow these rumors are true and Lamar Jackson ends up in Atlanta, you could have 4 new quarterbacks in that division. Buddy Martin Show, Seth Harp on Sports with you here on Podup with Matthews in the morning, courtesy of the Titan MRI Hotline. You got a question for Buddy or myself? Fire away, courtesy of Meldon Law, Facebook Live. Of course, Meldon Law, the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. You know, I look at where we are now with what Anthony Richardson did, and I'm taken aback by, I don't want to say the anger, the animosity, but the questions. Why couldn't he do that at Florida? Well, he did do that stuff at Florida. Why can't he? But why weren't we more successful? Well, his team gave up a lot of points. It struggled. And one of the questions that I asked last week to Kyle Crooks was, is it a good thing for Gator football if he's immediately successful in the NFL? Thus reflecting that, wait a second here, why wasn't he good immediately at Florida? Billy Napier had 1 year as opposed to wherever he is. If he's in Carolina, that's a first-year head coach. If he's in Indianapolis, that's a first-year head coach as we start to check the boxes. So, buddy, I look around at the entire National Football League in the perspective. You don't want to see a guy struggle per se, but what's it tell you in terms of Anthony Richardson's success if he's good right away as opposed to struggling right away?
That's a great question, Seth. I think that's going to be that'll be the referendum on the coaching staff, because let's be honest, if he becomes an all-pro, all-world, people say, well, why couldn't Billy Napier get that out of him? You know, and of course, we all know at different times, different circumstances, whatever. So I don't know if you can actually judge it that way, but people will. They'll say, well, we had the greatest quarterback in the history of NFL, and he didn't get to play here very much, you know, and so on. And it's just so, Seth, you've been around sports a long time. So much of sports success is the luck of the draw. Yeah. There are great athletes. There are great football players who never got on the field in the NFL. We see it all the time. And we don't know sometimes the ones that didn't get on the field that could have been great. So it is a crapshoot. I guess that's why they have measurables in the combines, because coaches want to have something tangible to look at. Say, okay, it says here he can do a 4.2 and whatever. So let's put it. I don't know, but it's a great question. I think that is where we'll have to judge the coaches. Let's say, okay, they could have done this. Look at Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen led it up for a couple of years, and he was forced to play Kyle Trask. He really didn't want to play him, but when his quarterback got hurt, he had to put him in the game. And look what happened. What if there hadn't been no injury, and Kyle Trask never got his chance? We'd never know, would we? So I guess that's what it is. It's fate, I guess, is what it is, Seth. And I didn't answer your question very well, but I think
it is, right? If Ben Roethlisberger ends up in Pittsburgh when he's like the 13th overall pick, that's a whole different story than if he ends up with the Jets or if he ends up with the Cardinals, right? It's a different game. Something I want to ask you, because you've been covering the Gators a long time. Of course, I've been in Florida for 8 years, was in Georgia for 9 years now. Good gracious. Georgia for 5 years before that. So, I did have a guy from my home state play for Steve Spurrier. He doesn't recruit Indiana, so when Rex Grossman went to Florida, it was a big deal. Anthony Richardson, barring a strange occurrence, will he be? I think I got this right? Is he the 4th or 5th Gator quarterback that will go in the first round? Warfel was a first rounder. Tebow was a first rounder. Rexy was a first rounder. Richardson a first rounder. I'm trying to think of who else.
Spurrier.
Steve, of course, Steve. Yeah,
Spurrier's like the 3rd or 4th pick in the draft.
Okay, so 5. Trask was a second rounder. Shane. Okay, I'm trying to. Yeah. So he'd be the 5th quarterback to go in the first round. Where do you put, if you can rank those, buddy? And where do you put expectations for Anthony Richardson at the next level entering the draft, as opposed to a Warfel, as opposed to a Tebow, as opposed to a Spurrier, as opposed to a Rex Grossman? If you put those 5 in a block, who do you think, looking back on it, said this person had the most expectations on it, this person had the least expectations on it?
Well, it's hard to my alarm's got off here in the back of me. It's hard to equate those things. Like, I know the education of us back in the day when we were young. Yes, I was once young. is that you think your quarterback comes out, wins the Heisman, and he's going to be a star in the NFL, and he sits the bench for most of his career, would be Steve Spurrier. He happened to be on a team of 49ers with John Brody and a quarterback who, by the way, from Miami named George Mara, who was at the time, was shocked when he was drafted. Why would they draft Spurrier and they had 2 quarterbacks on their roster, which they did. He wound up sitting the bench, learning the game, learning how to call games. Actually, John Brody has said to friends of mine that Spurrier helped extend his career. And Spurrier laughs at that by the fact that he was on the sideline helping Brody call plays and making up ball plays. And that's where he learned to be the genius. Now, he learned the trade of coaching when he was supposed to be a player. So evaluating the expectations. We thought Danny Werfel might be it, but Danny just never made it. Shane Micah, think about Shane. He was, 14 years in the league and backed up a whole bunch of people, and ain't nothing wrong with that job. As Spurrier says, the greatest job in the NFL is backup quarterback. You don't get hurt and you can hold the football. But the expectations. I think Tebow was the guy who broke people's hearts, and people still angry at John Elway for not giving him an opportunity in Denver. I lived in Denver for a long time, and I know my friends out there. And Tebow had something magical going for a while. I went out and bought DirecTV because of Tebow. I wish I could get the Bronco games. And he had that, and he won a playoff game. So, it's just expectations are what they are. You always think your guy's going to be better, going to be a star. And when they're not, you realize that there's really no equation between winning the Heisman and being an all-pro quarterback. So it's what's so interesting about Anthony is that he never reached those accolades because he never wasn't here long enough, but he's enormous talent. He's still the most talented quarterback athlete I've seen at Florida. So I guess it just depends on the year and the team, whatever. But I think Florida, it's kind of amazing that Florida's had so many quarterbacks. Now, let's face it, they got statues of 3 of them out there in the front. But yet, none of them has really, quote unquote, made it in the NFL.
It's crazy to think about it. So Anthony Richardson will be the 5th quarterback to go in the first round from the University of Florida. It'll be interesting to see if he somehow can be the highest pick ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Dante Fowler at 3, right? Dante Fowler at 3 is the highest pick.
Yeah,
ever.
I think you're right there. Yeah.
So
I'm not good at this stuff, Seth. I rely on you.
Hey, baby, I'm 43, so I still have
a little gray matter.
If you ask me where my car keys are, it's going to take me about 15 minutes to try to find those things. I know my dog's over there. Again, Podup with Matthews in the morning. Buddy Martin, Seth Harp with you here. Brought to you in part by Celebration.
What's your dog's name?
Daisy.
Where's Daisy?
I'll get her here for the end of the show.
Okay.
She's Nat writing in, courtesy of Facebook Live, and Meldon Law Spurrier, the 3rd pick as well. Yeah. So, that's, if Fowler's the most recent 3rd, the most recent high pick. That's hard to believe. That was 8 years ago.
Was it 8 years? Wow.
You're having fun. Again, Celebration Point, premium brands like Nike, International Diamond Center, Dave & Buster's, Bass Pro Shop, Regal Cinemas, Visor's Rooftop, and the HBC's restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. We will see you at Celebration Point, where Gators come to celebrate. Okay. So, here we are. Spring practice underway as we start to pivot here a little bit and looking at the new era of the Florida Gators. Not a lot comes out. You know that as well as I do, buddy.
Boy, doesn't there? That's truth.
You get to see the game and it's in prime time, or at least they're moving it, which is for television audience. I always try to tell fans that 99% of your game is consumed by people watching it on TV, not the people in the stands. So where this program sits right now, when it comes to spring ball, how much stock do you really, with the transfer portal and everything that we have, how much stock do you put into what we see in March and April in the bearing that it has come September at Utah?
There's some. I think about it, we can't know what it is because we don't get to see it. The practices, you get 10 to 15 minutes 3 times a week in media, and then you get to talk to the players and coaches that they select. and I know this is how Nick Saban does it, and this is how Billy Napier does it. I don't mean to harp, no pun intended with your name, on Billy Napier, but he's doing it like Nick Saban does it. Nick Saban's way is don't tell you anything I don't have to tell you. And for a poor beat reporter going out there picking up crumbs, it's really difficult to find out information. So how do we judge? Well, we say, well, we got the spring game on the 13th, the night game. I know it's probably good for TV, which is really what matters. And for recruiting, that is it. Recruiting. I made a comment the other day that Nick Saban, one of these days, he's going to say, Christmas interferes with recruiting. We got to do away with Christmas because it interferes with recruiting. But I mean, you get my drift here. So I think it means something. I think for Billy, it's more about infrastructure, getting his coaches in places, finding a quarterback. You know, Mertz looks promising, but I wouldn't count Miller out yet. And we kind of know what they're kind of construct. They've got these big bodies coming in the offensive line. They use the portal to get to the offensive linemen. I think the offensive line, if you look at the size of these guys, they're bigger as big as Kansas City Chiefs on the offensive line. And so now the running game, we know that's going to be featured because he's got two running backs, maybe three, who now are going to be effective. He wants to run the football because it helps his defense. Now, we don't know about young Austin Armstrong yet at 29, defensive coordinator, although I think there are others on that staff like Corey Raymond who will have a bigger role. So the defense has got to be fixed. So there's a lot of questions. But to answer your question, how does it relate? To Billy, it relates. Is he going to have all his coaches intact? Is he got finished with the portal? Has he got the final scholarship quarterback he wants, etc.? And then he has to go play Utah, which, by the way, is not exactly a picnic. And then we'll have to judge after the Utah game. Well, was that real, or was it like last year when it's kind of like fool's gold? I mean, after the Utah win, people will say, well, here we come, Georgia and Alabama. Well, didn't work out that way. So I think it's really precarious, Seth, right now, to keep a positive feeling going without knowing what you're going to be positive about. To watch Billy Napier, who I like and trust, as does Shane. I'm not sure how you feel about it, but he's got to produce the numbers on the field. He can't be 6 and 7 again. So it's going to be really challenging to see this. He's a good administrator. He's a good guy, I think. I don't know him personally. He's a good evaluator. He was a quarterback himself. And it says something that three of his coaches just got hired away by the NFL. So that's not nothing. So it's going to be an intriguing year to see if this construct can work, and if this philosophy he's got in his cast of thousands and $100 million new building can translate into W's on the field.
One more before we wrap up, at least your segment here with Podup and Matthews in the morning, courtesy of Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice in dentistry. Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Visit them at peachlanddental.com. And, of course, every Friday here on Podup with Matthews in the morning, Peachland Dentistry, JC and the QB's weekend picks. The rumored permanent opponents for the Gators in a 9-game slate. I know, we talked about this yesterday. At least I was able to go back and forth with JC a little bit. So I'll ask you if this is what it's going to happen. And Saban's already commenting on it. So pretty good chances it ends up Florida with Georgia, South Carolina, and Oklahoma. As a longtime Gator guy covering this team, what do you think about that new big three in the rotation for Florida on a yearly basis?
Well, we're not going to like it. And I can tell you why, because they're going to be rivalries. They're going to go away. Florida, Georgia won't be touched. That would definitely be one of them. What did Saban say? Well, we got a tough go. We got to face, what do you say, LSU, Tennessee, and whatever. He plays them every year. What difference does it make? And so the one thing, and it's the cliche, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I love the playoffs. I've been campaigning for this for 30 years. I wrote a column 30 years ago saying they need to streamline college football, get it down to 50, 60, 70 teams, play it down, have a playoff, etc. And they've done that. But the problem is now there's going to be a lot of changes because why? There's a lot of money, 69 million more a piece per team in the SEC, and they're going to have to accommodate television even more. And if television wants it, they'll get it. And these permanent rivalries, I'm not even sure what it means, but I guess you got to play them every year. Would it be a good thing? I don't want to see the rivalries of old go away. I still wish Florida was playing Auburn. I thought that was a terrific series, but some are going to go away. And I looked at that list the other day. I've read it 3 or 4 times trying to figure it out. There's going to be some real yelling and screaming when they put that permanent list out. That's going to be a big test for the SEC.
Yeah, the one I always say feel bad for right now is Auburn. They get both Georgia and Alabama.
Yeah.
When this goes, but who knows what if Saban is even the head coach in 3 years?
Exactly. If things are changing so fast, heck, who knows? Maybe by that time, Clemson and FSU will be in the SEC. Not really, but I mean, they're whining and complaining now because of their deal is $30 million left or whatever than the SEC. So yeah, change is good, but boy, I tell you, it can also cut you a lot of different ways.
Yeah, ugly stuff. When it comes to if you're a traditionalist and you're a purist, but I always tell people, as a kid that grew up in Indiana and Notre Dame, Miami went away, and Notre Dame Purdue is gone away, and Notre Dame Michigan. It's just the price that Texas A&M went away. Oklahoma State is going to go away, although Texas and Texas A&M going to come back here, right? So those things happen, man. It's the price of doing business. You can either have your rivalries, buddy, or you can make $100 million a year per school. And they've decided that the $100 million is more important. So
what price rivalries?
Yeah. Well, yeah. What do you do? All right, Buddy Martin show. What do you got coming up? Website, story-wise?
We continue to give you the best stuff you want to read on GatorBaitMedia.com. Sign up and find out. We have some terrific writers. France Beery has a fantastic column today, by the way, covering everything you want to know about Gator sports and the thoughts today. So check it out, GatorBaitMedia.com. Tonight, David Whitley, our old buddy, will be on. We'll be discussing. He likes the whimsical topics. And tomorrow we'll have Chris Herring on the program talking about Gator basketball, and my old friend Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, see what he thinks about the permanent rivalries.
There you go. Buddy Martin with us here. Podup with Matthews in the morning, Seth Harp. Buddy, thank you very much.
Enjoyed it. Yeah, enjoyed it very much. Thank you for having me on.
And look forward to talking with you soon.
Thank you.
Coming up, one of college basketball's most hallowed records, Pistol Pete Maravich's record may be going away, and it's drawing some controversy. We'll tell you why next. Podup with Matthews in the morning. Seth Harp with you here on this Tuesday.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peaceland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Comfort Temp, comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise.
Campus USA Credit Union.
QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, and watch. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, Chris Doring Mortgage, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Doreen Wibby, Realtor Caldwell Banker, MM Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Aver and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Cube Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Hi, Steve Spurrier here. You know, making a reservation at my restaurant is easier than a Saturday afternoon homecoming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, a number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
Seth Harp, Harp on Sports with you here on Podup with Matthews in the morning. Got to thank Buddy Martin for stopping by for the first half of the program. Looking back on Anthony Richardson's combine performance and also talking a little spring football with the Gators and the potential permanent opponents with the new SEC game slate or SEC schedule. Again, you want to be a part of this? I'm flying solo with you for the second half of the program. Feel free to fire off your questions, courtesy of Meldon Law, Facebook Live, Meldon Law Questions. Again, Meldon Law, the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. Wanted to start this second half with this. This is something that is starting to become an issue for certain people. When I saw it at first, I'm like, oh, I'll let the young man break the record. The more I thought about it, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. And that is former LSU Tiger, Pistol Pete Maravich's all-time scoring mark. He holds the record, right? And I want to make sure I get all of this right. 3,667 points through 3 years at Louisiana State University. So in 3 years at LSU, Pistol Pete, 3,667 points. Along comes a guy that's in his final year. He's a senior at the University of Detroit. His name is Antoine Davis. He's 3 points away from breaking Pistol Pete's record. Now, where's the controversy, you say? Well, here's the controversy. The Detroit team that he plays for is 6 games below 500. And they've already lost in their conference tournament. So they're out. They're out. They are not going to make the NIT. They're not going to make the NIT. So, it was one of those things that I thought when I started to see this, like, oh, how cool would it be if I were Scott Strickland? I'd be clamoring with the NIT to try to get University of Detroit to come to Florida and maybe get to see, even though it's opponent, get to see this Antoine Davis break the all-time college scoring record of Pistol Pete here at Florida. But Detroit's not going to make the NIT. So enter these other tournaments. What is it? The CBI? You have other college tournaments. The thing is about those tournaments, those are pay for play. The NIT is, even though it's a secondary tournament, you get invited to it. The other college tournaments, you pay. And I want to say it's $17,000, $17,500. So here's this University of Detroit team that has a losing record, that's 6 games below 500. And Antoine Davis may set the all-time scoring mark, break Pistol Pete's record. But in order to do so, they are going to play in probably the 4th college basketball tournament in which they are going to pay to be in. And then he'll set the record. Is that dirty? Is that cheap? Who was it the other night in the NBA? Was it Giannis? That to get the triple-double, shot the ball off the backboard and grabbed the board, grabbed the rebound so he could get his triple-double. It's like, and the NBA said, no, we're not doing that. And they took it away from him. Russell Westbrook tried to do that a couple years ago too, where he just threw the ball off the backboard and caught it so he could get the rebound, his own rebound, and claim that he got a triple-double. And I give the NBA credit. The NBA goes in and says, no, we're taking that away. Taking it away. But you've got one of college basketball's most historic records that could be going away. It's going to be broken. And the question is, if it's broken in real time, like if it had been broken in the Horizon League tournament, okay, it's part of it, right? But if it's broken in one of these, it's not even a secondary, it's the 4th tier of the tournament. Is it, again, I don't want to say dirty, because it's not dirty, but is it cheapened? Is it a knockoff? Is it the same? This is not, and I was trying to think of any other reference in any other sport which you can get into this, and you really, really can't. Because every game, with the way the postseason is set up, I guess you could talk about somebody breaking the all-time rushing mark in college football if they do it in a bowl game, but that's a real game with real competition that, it may be a secondary or a 3rd-tier bowl, but you're still competing in a game in which you were invited and it's against other competition. You're getting ready for the draft. This is just one of those weird situations, just the way because on how we structure college basketball with these secondary tournaments. So Yeah, Pistol Pete's all-time leading record, scoring record could be going away with a team that is 6 games below 500 that's going to pay to be in one of these postseason tournaments. So I think this is fascinating, and it's going to be one of those things that is going to be up for debate once they decide that they're going to play. And look, they'll play in this, you bet. And, I'm starting to see things start to simmer and bubble to the surface. Like they should show some integrity and not play. I'm the University of Detroit, and my school can have the all-time leading scorer in the history of college basketball. Why wouldn't I do it? Why, for the integrity of the sport? Why? I can put up that Antoine Davis, all-time leading record holder, beats Pistol Pete Barrage. Yeah. Tommy Seal writing in, courtesy of Facebook Live Dirty, but I do want to see him break the record the right way. See, that's just it. If you're in the NCAA, if you're in the NIT, would that be okay? If he broke the record in the NIT? But I would sit there and say, yeah, you know what? That's fine. But when you're paying to be in a tournament, right? I saw, and I don't want to dive into too much policies and politics here, but I saw recently that there was one poll that you could pay, and they would elevate your status by how much you paid inside of the poll, a political poll in which I'm like, what? I could give you money and I'm going to be worth more? Okay. All right. And we've seen these things before in other things, right? Where I pay, I get some notarization. I've had that happen before where certain entities have said, hey, look, if you want to pay for this, we'll make you the lead. Well, I'm not, no. Certain Hall of Fames do this. If you pay, we'll put you in our Hall of Fame. I'm going to pay for him to be in your Hall of Fame. Why would I want that? That doesn't have to pay for that accolade. No. So it's just interesting stuff. Nat writing in, he must have been the only one on his team that could score. Yeah, well, you play for 4 years, you play in a conference that way, and he averaged 30 points a game. He's a good basketball player. Again, his name's Antoine Davis. And I didn't even know until last week that this record could be broken. And, I start to think about it, all the records in my lifetime. I've been pretty fortunate. I got to, not in person, but Pete Rose's hitting streak, wrong or right. Barry Bonds breaking Hank Aaron's record. Of course, LeBron the other night, Wayne Gretzky passing Gordie Howe. There have been these all-time marks and all-time records that I've been fortunate and lucky enough to see take place. How many times have we seen the rushing or the, receiving mark get broken, quarterback marks get broken, just all across the board? And here's college basketball's all-time record that's about to fall, and it could fall in front of a crowd of 200 people. I know. Crazy stuff, huh? But just interesting stuff for you, at least. I want you to think about it, that Pistol Pete's record could be broken, and it's going to be broken in a fourth-tier tournament in which the team that breaks it pays to be a part of it. Just think about that for a second. Podup with Matthews in the morning is a service of Doreen Wiebe, Caldwell Banker, MM Parish Realtor. Of course, Doreen wants to help you and your dreams come true when it comes to home ownership. Call her today, 352-562-1411. That's 352-562-1411 to buy or sell your home in North Central Florida. So there you go. All right, something else that I wanted to bring to your guys' attention. The Pistol Pete thing I thought was fascinating. I want to circle back around to something when it comes to college football. And again, this is one of these questions that when I was looking at just the numbers, I thought, wait a second here. Are we going to witness something here in the NFL draft with regards to the SEC that we're missing, that at least I'm missing up until this point? Right now, we know more than likely we're going to have 3 SEC players, right, go in the top 10. Bryce Young, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson. We're going to have at least 3 SEC quarterbacks go in the top 10. Well, Hendon Hooker is also going to be drafted. And we ask ourselves, is Stetson Bennett going to be drafted? And then you start to think to yourself, wait a second here. That's 5 quarterbacks from the same conference in the same year. Now, I was trying to think of the last time I saw 3 quarterbacks from the same conference. go in the top 10 of a draft? I can't find it. I can see 3 quarterbacks going in the top 10 of a draft. There's times we've seen as many as 5 quarterbacks go in the top 10 of a draft. And if somehow Anthony Richardson catches everybody's eye, you could have a record that may never go away, because you could end up having 3 SEC quarterbacks go in the top 5 of this draft. So this is what I want to ask you as we look at this. If this is the Bryce Young, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson draft with Hendon Hooker and Stetson Bennett also going, that's 5 quarterbacks from a conference of 14 teams. Is that the greatest quarterback class ever to come out of the SEC? Is this the greatest quarterback class ever in the history of the Southeastern Conference? It is, isn't it? Now, I'm not talking about success on the field, right? This is about NFL talent. This is a draft class question, not, well, Joe Namath. And no. They're all playing at the same time. And we had that where Tebow and Matt Stafford, right, were both in the SEC at the same time. I was trying to think if there was a third quarterback other than Tebow and Matt Stafford in the SEC that went in the first round that year. I can't think of one. So are we on the cusp? And again, so enamored with Anthony Richardson and what he was doing at the combine and everything that went into that. Is this the greatest draft class in the history of the Southeastern Conference at the quarterback position? Right? You sit there and think, well, Spencer Rattler, who ended up having a good closing campaign, right? He played well against Clemson, played really well against Tennessee, and against Notre Dame, strong until the late stages of the fourth quarter. And then Notre Dame just put a ton of pressure on him, and, que sera. Spencer Rattler would have been the 6th quarterback if he'd have come out. He'd have been the 6th. Now, I mean, he probably would have been the 4th quarterback off the board, right? Had he gone before Hendon Hooker? I don't know if he'd have gone before him. But, Spencer Rattler deciding he's going to stay another year. Okay. I just look at this class where you're going to have 3 SEC quarterbacks go potentially in the top 10 and 5 quarterbacks get drafted. And I was trying to think if there's anybody else, of course, anybody else that's a senior that's going to be a part of this class and that could be drafted, that could end up on a roster coming out of the SEC. Of course, guys have transferred. I just think it's fascinating when it's all said. And I don't know if you'll ever see Stetson Bennett start an NFL game. I don't know if you'll ever see that. I think there's a possibility that you could see Hendon Hooker start an NFL game. So it's pretty remarkable that this SEC class could feature as many as 5 quarterbacks drafted and as many as 3 in the first round. So something to keep an eye on, gang, as we get ready for the NFL draft around the corner. That the SEC is just the greatest NFL drafting class for the SEC ever. Now, conference-wise, that's a different debate, right? Because you're going to have to go through, and there's been some draft classes that have brought some elite quarterbacks into the league. There have been, some ACC classes, some Big Ten classes that have brought as many as 5, 6 quarterbacks in on their own right. This is just a question whether the Southeastern Conference is their crowning achievement. Is this their crown jewel? Podup with Matthews in the morning. It's a service brought to you in part by Chris Doring Mortgage. They do mortgage lending, right? They do. They're at Chris Doring Mortgage, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Doring Mortgage today, 352-244-0840. That's 352-244-0840. Got a question for us? Feel free to fire away, courtesy of the Meldon Law Facebook Live question queue. All you got to do is get those fingers working, right? Let us know what your question is, and be more than happy to read it on the air. Like I said, as long as it's relevant. As long as it's relevant, it has some bearing in with what we're talking about. There you go. So anyway, those are the 2 at least big marquee things that I looked at, like to me, that were simmering on the stove today. Was the Pistol Pete story, all-time record going to be broken in its 3rd, 4th tier tournament, and also the fact that you can have 3 SEC quarterbacks go in the top 10, 3 in the top 5, should everything play out right. Somebody gets really excited, and this stuff happens in the draft, right? We know teams get excited, they move up because it's one of these things. If you're going to wait for your guy, I'm going to wait for my guy at 8, and somebody jumps you at 7, you're cooked. You are. And it's imminent, apparently. It could happen by this weekend that the Bears move that number 1 overall pick. And if somebody's going up there, who are they going up there to get? Are they going up there to get Bryce Young? He pretty much, even though he came in under 6 foot, was he 5'10", 206 pounds? It's weird to think that that's an inch taller than me and my weight right now. So I wonder what, I was like, well, I could be an NFL quarterback. Looks like he runs the 40, probably a second and a half faster, and throws the ball 40 more yards down the field than I do. A lot more talented. But it's fascinating to watch just the Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young debate, where you've got this physical specimen in Anthony Richardson, that his physical resume is moving him up the board. And Bryce Young, he comes in shorter, not as tall as people thought. His weight was a question mark too. And they're like, well, what does that do? Well, it's not really going to do much. So we may be to the era now where, what happened with Kenny Pickett last year? People were worried about his hand size and whether or not he could hold on to the ball. So you wonder now, is this going to be a big deal? Is this not going to be a big deal? And for Kenny Pickett, I don't know if he dropped because of it, but we saw with the number 1 overall pick a couple of years ago, Kyler Murray, that nobody cared that he was short or smaller. Nobody cared. At least Arizona didn't care. Didn't just kind of shrug their shoulders. All right, whatever, let's go. And wonder if Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, there have been quarterbacks under 6 feet that have had success in the NFL, quite a bit of success in the NFL. So we'll see how that all plays out here as we get to the final stages. And again, we've got a whole 5-6 weeks of this to go before, all said and done when it comes to the NFL draft. But it's going to be interesting watching these things play out and this drama that plays out over the course of the next 6-7 weeks here. All right. Something else I wanted to look at too, and I know I went college basketball, and I want to circle back around to college basketball again, and that has to do with the NCAA tournament this year. And the Florida Gators, we know the men, the only way they're going to make the NCAA tournament is if they run the table. Florida's going to have to win the SEC tournament. I've seen, stranger things have happened. Not really. I guess the year that, what was that, 15 years ago when they had the tornado? Yeah, that would be the weird year that stranger things happened, where the game had to be moved and they ended up playing at Georgia Tech in front of dozens of people. Has that been 15 years, 16 years ago now? Good gracious, it's been that long. It has. So yeah, stranger things have happened in this tournament. I'll admit that. But it's Alabama's tournament to lose. I saw certain seedings where Rick Barnes and Tennessee were in the same region as Texas, which I think would be good. I love matchups like that. I love when you can pit old foe, new foe, former team. Drama. The creation of that with the way the bracket lines up is pretty cool when it's all said and done. So I was sitting there thinking about, SEC expectations when it comes to the NCAA tournament. And, where the conference is this year and where Auburn is compared to where Texas A&M is compared to what Mississippi State is. And let's face it, on Thursday, Mississippi State has to beat Florida if they're going to want to make the tournament. So that's going to be interesting when Florida's playing the role of spoiler right out of the gate at 12:30. Well, tip at 1 on ESPN 98.1 FM 850 AM WRUF on Thursday. But looking at expectations for the SEC when it comes to the NCAA tournament, Alabama's expectation is what? Alabama's Final Four. Alabama's expectation is Final Four. If Alabama doesn't make the Final Four, then are we going to look back and go, I don't know if that was a successful season. So that's where Nate Oates has that program now. And look, it could be one of those situations where Alabama's a 1 seed and Gonzaga's a 2 seed. And if Gonzaga beats them, I don't think there's any shame. And of course, there's no shame in that. Look, Alabama could be a 1 seed and Purdue could be a 2 seed. If Purdue beats them, I don't think there's any shame in that either. I don't. So it's not one of these things that, you lost so you underachieved. No. Now, look, if you're Alabama in a 1 seed and you get dumped by an 8 seed in the second round, yeah, I think there's okay. But just the different tier levels of this conference, for me, Alabama, it's Final Four. Tennessee, where Tennessee was 6 weeks ago compared to where Tennessee is now, to me, Tennessee's got to get through that first weekend. right? I think the expectation level for Tennessee right now is Sweet 16. That should be the expectation level. And it doesn't, you make it there, a sigh of relief, but that's where they are. Anything less than that, if they get beat in the second round from where they were at the beginning of the year, ranked in the top 3, and as high as they got all the way up to the top, and since then they've taken a couple steps back, right? But to me, Tennessee, at least Sweet 16, at least. And then you start to look at teams like Texas A&M. What's Texas A&M's expectations in this thing? To me, they got to win a game. So I've got, there's different tiers in terms of where your team is and how good you are and what your expectation is. Kentucky is the one that I win a game. Now, the latest on Kentucky looks like they're going to be anywhere between that 7 to 10 range. So what does that mean? Well, if you're a 7 seed, you know what that means. You're playing a 2 seed in the second round. So Kentucky could end up playing Purdue, could end up playing Gonzaga. The likes of that is what they're staring at. Right? Because right now, I think, everybody's pretty much the consensus right now that UCLA is a 1 as of right now, and Houston is a 1 as of right now. Alabama, as long as they win the SEC tournament, are going to be a 1. And then, you start to get into some questions. What if Purdue wins the Big Ten? Do they get a 1 over, Gonzaga? They stay in St. Mary's on that collision course. What happens with them? So, again, I think it's fascinating when I start to look at this. What should the expectation levels be? And Kentucky, to me, right, it's winning a game. Mississippi State, if Mississippi State gets in, that's that expectation level with where they are this year. If they lose a game, it's like, it's just if they make the tournament, their expectation level starts with Florida on Thursday. They beat Florida and they're in the NCAA tournament. Okay. But to me, Alabama, when it comes to the SEC, it's Final Four, isn't it? They're the only team in the SEC that's expected. I don't even know if you can make a case that anybody in the SEC is expected to get to the Elite 8. I mean, you could have made Tennessee a case a couple of weeks ago, but Tennessee's looking at a 4 or 5 seed right now, which means they're going to end up tangling with a 1 seed the second weekend. And then, with what's happened with Bruce Pearl at Auburn, oh gosh, and the rest of this conference. Oh, no. And what are we saying the SEC is going to get right now? 7 teams trying to come out of the SEC. And okay, Missouri is of all the teams in the conference, Missouri is the one that I can't peg. I can't. I could see Missouri in the Sweet 16. I could see Missouri as a 6 seed lose to 11th seeded Kennesaw State. FAU. I could see all of that stuff playing itself out. So it's a weird year when it comes to the conference. And I know we say that predominantly every now and then, like, it's a weird year. It's a weird year because you have Alabama as a 1, and then you could have 5 SEC teams seeded 5 through 7. You could, depending on if Tennessee struggles. Alabama could end up being a 1, and Tennessee could be a 5. Kentucky could be a 6. Missouri could be a 6. Texas A&M could be a 6. It's just it's a jumble in there where all those teams sit. It's kind of just like, okay, this is kind of a little bit weird how this lays itself out here. But again, I think, I don't know where you'd put it in terms of interest when it comes to the conference tournament. I thought the Big Ten was going to be that's going to be the tournament. But boy, over the course of the last few weeks, that conference, even Purdue at the top went 4-4 in their last 8 games. Northwestern finished strong. Northwestern went 6-2 down the stretch. Think about how crazy of a year it is in that conference when Northwestern, they're the 2 seed. But again, I want to leave you with this when it comes to this, because I know this is my last show of the week. I know Kyle Crooks will be in here coming up tomorrow and Thursday. In terms of who's due in the tournament, I've got 2 teams that are due that aren't. I don't consider them blue bloods, but the 2 teams that are the most due in the NCAA tournament are Purdue and Gonzaga. Purdue and Gonzaga are the 2 teams that are the most due. Gonzaga to win a championship. They've been to the Final Four. I get it. But Gonzaga is that team that they're the Bobby Bowden in the early 90s when it comes to college football. Like, are they ever going to get over this hump? Are they ever going to, Susan Lucci, eat your heart out, right? Are they ever going to win? Martin Scorsese, Didn't win Best Director for 40 years, 30 years until he did The Departed. And then the Blue Bloods, your Blue Bloods that are good this year, that have the longest drought. UCLA's drought's at 28 years. It's been 28 years since UCLA won a national title. So UCLA's drought's at 28 years. And of the Blue Bloods with the longest drought, Indiana at 36. 36 years since Indiana won a national championship. So there you go. Got to thank Buddy Martin for swinging by today. As always, great talking with you guys and chatting with you guys over the course of an hour. Can't thank Buddy enough. Again, Kyle Crooks will be in here. Shane will be back tomorrow. A quick reminder to everybody that Podup with Matthews in the morning is a service of QC Kinetics. If you got joint pain in your knees, shoulders, hip, or back that won't go away, check out QC Kinetics for long-lasting relief, not surgery, drugs, or downtime. Schedule your free consultation at QC Kinetics. So there we go. Got to thank everybody that Phil, the whole gang back at Weeby Productions for getting us through this Tuesday as well. Everybody, enjoy your Tuesday and look forward to chatting with you soon. Again, Seth Harp from Harp on Sports. Thanks to Buddy Martin for Podup with Matthews in the morning.